Hello, everyone. This is Deepu Krishna. I head the admissions at BITSLAW School, Mumbai, and a warm welcome to each one of you. I'm very sure that you guys have been looking forward to this session. We've received a lot of mails, phone calls, and WhatsApp messages relating to this session, and this is one of the most sought after session where we wanted to meet faculties and also ask questions. So yeah, here we are with the session. We are in a session with two of our most distinguished faculties. Uh, so let me just lay down some rules of the session. Initially, how we're going to go about this, it's a panel discussion. So I'll be asking some questions to both the faculties and they would be answering the same. Additionally, at the end of the session, we will have a separate a separate session on Q&A where you can also ask questions and those can be answered by the faculties as well as me also. I want to repeat one thing. This is not an admissions per se session. This is a purely academic session. This is related to what when you join the law school and your life ahead for the next 5 years. So any question relating to admissions and anything related to the admission policy or process, you can get in touch with us separately. And my team is also here. So they will be giving you links in case if those questions come. The session will be primarily and we will be strictly confining ourselves to questions relating to academic. Okay, so I hope I'm clear. So if you have questions, what you could do is you can use this Q&A, chat room where you can put in those questions and we will take those questions at the end of the session. Okay, so let me first introduce to you two of those people I have looked up to. I have been an ex-colleague to them. I have worked with them and I have seen the great amount of trust which students used to put on them and the way they have nurtured legal talent of this country for the past 10 years of my life. I have been observing both of them has been phenomenal. The way they interact with the students, the way they were able to mentor, the way they were able to create a character of students is something which I've witnessed from my own eyes, and I'm a big fan of both of them. So I know that this calls for a formal introduction, so I will also formally introduce them to you. So let me first start with Professor Vishwas. Professor Vishwas Devaiyan, he has obtained a PhD from the University of Liverpool, an LLM from Warwick University, and a Bachelor's of Law from University Law College, Bangalore. His PhD degree was on the regulation of human embryonic stem cell research, titled Protecting Egg Donors and Patients in Human Embryonic Stem Cell Research, a critical analysis of the current proposed regulation in India. Now, this is something which many of you, when you join law school, will understand that in the coming years of your life, how important it is. Not just that, Professor Vishwas has not just been a teacher, he is at art, like all of us, a teacher, but he has also had a lot of managerial experience and also administrative experience as a capacity of he has headed many many important offices at General Global Law School, and that has been him. We are also accompanied by Professor Anand Mishra. Professor Anand Mishra might be a very familiar face to many of you because we call him the one who is the most famous amongst us between students because of his the great interview sessions which he has taken with students. I have a lot of emails and a lot of messages where they have been praising the way he was able to interact with the student. So he is a very known face amongst you. But then, as I said, there is a formal introduction which I have to give. So yes, Dr. Anand Mishra received his doctorate degree from Louisiana State University, USA. Dr. Mishra was a recipient of the Gilbert Foundation Fellowship to advance his doctoral research while contributing to the understanding of financial uncertainty and risk attending renewable electricity generation. Dr. Mishra's research work is mainly in the area of renewable energy finance and climate finance, which makes him one of the most famous faculties around in India about finance, about management, and also about law. Okay, so let's start with the session and let's just hear from both of them about those few questions which I'm very sure you guys have about it. You guys have butterflies in your stomach when you think about the way ahead and the 5 years of your life which you're going to invest with the law school, right? So let me start with a question which is common to both of the panelists. And this is one question which I have heard a lot of parents contemplating, asking, even the students asking me about this, about that what is exactly the difference between a BA LLB and a BBA LLB. This starts right from the time a student starts preparing for his law school days. And once when he steps into the law school, he actually gives an answer. But then this is one question which I'm very sure most of the parents who are attending the session might have. So let's begin with that basic question. And I would first ask Professor Vishwas to answer, and then Professor Mishra can join in. Yeah. So you're on mute. Yeah.
Deepu, thank you for that generous introduction. And, I wouldn't have been as generous as you are. So a warm welcome to all the students joining us from different parts of India, maybe even outside of India. To give a very honest answer to this question, right? I've been part of legal academia for more than 17 years now. I've kind of interacted with a whole range of people, in-house counsels, partners from law firms, experts in the industry, academics from different parts of the world. One very important element that all of us need to understand is whichever route that you take, the idea of the discipline of law is to give you a bunch of analytical tools to be able to handle and deal with a whole range of circumstances. Now, that could be through the lens of a BA degree or a BBA degree, right? And to give you a sense, some tend to think, oh, if I get a BBA LLB degree, I'll have certain kind of advantages over someone with a BA LLB degree. Let me give you a very interesting example. The interesting example is something that you can verify. That of a very well-known financial law professor and practitioner. His name is Philip Woods. He is the preeminent, expert as far as financial law transactions are concerned. He was a former teacher, a former professor in University of Oxford. Allen & Overy is the law firm that he works. He is of South African origin. To be really honest, there are countries which don't even have a law degree to become a solicitor. And Professor Philip Woods just has a BA degree. And now getting to the second point, this wonderful gentleman, visited NUJS. I was a professor in NUJS before I moved to Jindal. And he was at that point in time negotiating the Greek debt crisis. Now, you must really understand here, there's a lot of economics involved when it comes to, sovereign debt restructuring. Countries are going, kaput and they don't have money. You have recent examples of Sri Lanka, Pakistan suffering from, certain concerns. And it is a highly loaded, negotiation between different stakeholders. But here's a man who's equipped with a BA degree, right? There's a whole bunch of economists surrounding him. And he said one thing that I really appreciate about my training is the tools that my BA degree actually gave me to listen very patiently to a whole bunch of economists and ask them the most relevant questions. Are you at the end of the day making sense when it comes to individual common man? Is this restructuring even a possibility, even feasible, right? And here's a man with a BA degree who's kind of dictating a whole bunch of economists in a room full of complex negotiators. So nothing else tells me that it really doesn't matter whether you have a BA degree and an BA and an LLB degree in combination, or a BBA or an LLB degree in combination. What anyone needs to focus on is the tool sets that you're going to be using to handle different situations. And to be really honest, after having interaction with a whole range of law firm partners across India, a lot of them today kind of suggest that a lot of the underpinning of the current, graduates of law schools, needs to be in having an understanding of both the social context, political context, economic context, and historical context in which the law is actually made. And that is a true skill set to actually possess. And at the same time, having some relevance and understanding of business, which you might actually tend to gain through your understanding of economics, etc. Right? So to me, that question is almost a redundant question when someone asks, is there a real difference between a BA and a BBA LLB? It entirely boils down to how it is actually taught and what kind of tool sets we are going to equip our students. So we have very successful negotiators, very successful law firm partners today who do not have a background in BBA LLB. And similarly, there are a whole range of interesting, litigators who might have a BBA degree, LLB degree, may not be practicing in a law firm, happily doing independent litigation. Right. So there are success stories on both sides. The idea of, young students generally tend to get this feedback from their peers or a senior student who's gone into a law school, saying that, hey, my BBA degree is fabulous and it might actually give me an advantage over it. Nothing. Don't listen to all of this. This is a whole lot of spiel and understanding that just a student has. An 18-year-old student has made up his own opinion or formulated his own thoughts about a preference for a particular, degree. That's not the case. It is what tools you're going to be equipped with, how you're going to use it at a later point in time. And that is the key bit. And I would say, having come from, a BA, LLB degree background, I don't feel in any way disadvantaged even to this day. I have an LLM, which is largely, and Anand will laugh at me here, with largely an understanding of financial loss. And I have dealt with patent law related matters, so mostly pharmaceuticals and biotechnology. I don't have a degree in science. So if anyone is actually having these notions that, oh, I have a BA LLB degree, I'm completely disadvantaged, I don't understand finance, I don't understand science, I'm an example, right? I write, teach, research. I did my PhD in an area which is on science and technology, right? There's nothing more open about this area. It is all about the tool sets and how you begin to use these tool sets.
Greatly answered, sir. It's basically the tool sets and the skill sets that you acquire in this 5 years, which is the important thing. Yeah, we all will agree to it. Professor Anand, your take on the same?
Thank you, Deepu. So obviously, I agree with everything Professor Vishwas has said. But let me throw in a couple of anecdotes, which I guess are relevant for this question. The first example I'll give a very recent one. If many of you would be aware, the recent Hindenburg episode saga that has happened in Indian financial markets, and many of you would be aware the Supreme Court had a committee, which Supreme Court put together a committee of legal scholars and practitioners to figure out 2-3 questions which are related with the Adani Group's activities in the financial markets. And the people who were sitting on those committees, they did not have BBA or classical finance degree. And they were essentially looking into the question of volatility in the financial market, amongst many other things. One of the question is whether there was undue volatility in the Adani's various companies' share price or not. Now, I am from the classical finance background. I can tell you that concept of volatility in finance is considered to be quite complex. And here, when I began to read that report, and I was a little bit, although I've been in law school for many years now, and I agree with Professor Vishwas, and in fact, anyone who says that, classical finance degree is not required to address these kind of issues. But I saw that none of those individuals sitting in the committee had classical finance degree, but they had right set of question. I would recommend everyone to read that report. All they did was ask the right set of question, identified the right people who would be able to not only answer the question, also simplify the issues, underlying issues, so that committee could decide and give its opinion. So Hindenburg report is one of a very good example where people with non-finance background, if their critical thinking skills, that is ability to identify and tease out right set of question is there, then you will obviously ask the right set of question. And even the complex issues such as volatility can also be addressed by those individuals. So that said, I'm just corroborating what Professor Vishwas and Deepu have been saying for a very long time, and even on this platform, that you do not need a classical finance or BBA degree. That's one answer. Second answer, very small anecdote. I received a few years ago, I received a call from my student from one of the leading law schools in India. And that student was from BLLB background, and she was interning with one of the law firm, and that law firm had expertise in corporate law affairs. And at that point of time, she joined the internship, and within the first day itself, she was given a task of looking into the documentation and governance of a very complex financial instrument called swap. Swap is over-the-counter derivative instrument, which is quite complicated. Even MBA finance students and CFA students also struggle with some of the underlying ideas. She didn't have to understand the instrument. What she had to do was look at variety of eventualities and possibilities that could arise out of holding that financial instrument. She had to anticipate those situations and provide some sort of safeguards within the contract, within the documentation of covenants of that instrument. And she had absolutely no idea about swap instrument. So we had a few conversations over the phone and online. And voila, within a month or so, she was not only managed to, did not even manage to draft that, covenant. At least she was part of the team, but she also developed an interest in that. So next semester, I found her in my course of financial markets. So the reason I gave you this all of you this anecdote, that if there is a requirement that a BLLB student need to understand some financial concepts, if you have the right set of tools, which Professor Vishwas is hinting at, you will be able to do that. Now let me speak a little bit from the BBA's LLB students' perspective. I mean, everyone here present would seem that why are we convincing all the BLLB students to basically, not worry, and you can also do the finance course. If you are joining a BBLLB program, it's possible that you are quite sure that you do like some of the finance and some of the business courses. There's nothing wrong to go ahead and do the BBLLB program. This is not what we mean here. Go for the BBLLB program if you do enjoy those courses from the outset. Our address, at least the reason I'm speaking about the distinction between BBA and BA, in case you are unsure that, maybe after a couple of years, I would like to go into corporate law. That's what Professor, in my opinion and my interpretation, if they agree, they can, let me know, let us know. I think that if you have the right set of tool and you are BLLB, after 2 years, if you do decide to get into corporate law, you will be able to. There are so many examples like that. And if you are a BBLLB student and you eventually decide that, no, this is not something I want to do, after 2 years or after, there are so many opportunities where you can actually go ahead and change direction of your life a little bit. There are so many avenues available. So therefore, these are not the reasons to worry about. Deepu, back to you.
So the picture is very clear. And if you have to ask me about this, believe me, when you graduate, no one is going to come and call you a BA LLB lawyer or a BBA LLB lawyer. You are a lawyer. Very simple.
Yeah, I just shared a link. I don't know whether it's reached everyone, but Philip Wood is an English literature graduate. Yeah.
Where did you share it, sir? If you
I'll send it across. I'll send it across. Yeah.
send it to the chat box, so the students can also download the same and bookmark it. And with my experience of placements also, and my friends who come for placements to various law schools, they also tell me that when we go to the law school, we do not even look at what is the degree that the student has done, if he's a BLLB or a BBLLB. What they look at is where has the student interned. During that internship, what was his area of interest? So the toolkit which Professor Vishwas was talking about is exactly something which you get through those internships. And Professor Anand also gave you an example, a very classic example about how a student, when she went for internship, created that toolkit basically, and she was able to adapt to the same, right? Okay, so the next question is to Professor Vishwas. Professor Vishwas, let's talk about the BITSLAW BA LLB. How different is it? What different are we doing at BITSLAW for the BA LLB course?
Right. Very, very important question. Thank you for asking this question, Deepu. And it's a self goal as far as a lot of law schools are concerned when they try to build a 5-year law program wherein they see the BA programs or the BBA programs in isolation from the law programs. And that is where the failure of most law schools actually lie. The reason why I say this, and I say this with a fair bit of experience, because students generally in their first year come with the hope of, hey, I'm going to learn a lot of law, right? And you're beginning with certain courses which are run not interacting with each other, right? Not speaking with each other, right? You learn sociology, you learn history, you learn political science, you learn economics. But again, neither of these disciplines are speaking to each other, nor are these disciplines speaking to law, right? Similarly, when you take it to the level of a course, like BBA or similarly, there are courses there which are not speaking to each other or probably not even having any interaction with the law courses. And that is exactly where the problem lies, because students then become disillusioned. Sometimes questions do come up as to why am I studying this, right? What is relevant? How is it relevant for me? Just like when I studied, tan theta and cos theta in my 12th, and 11th, I could just not relate. Why are we studying all of this stuff, right? Similarly, that's been the case in most law schools. Don't want to name, most of them are on similar line and platform. What we are trying to do is do away with this, operating in silos and bring in these courses in context with law. So if I'm studying sociology, history, political science, I'm also bringing in an element of law within it to get a sense of where it is actually going, how the social context is influencing the law, how the political context is influencing the law, how the economic context is influencing the law, right? And that is exact. And also at the same time, how are these elements, sociology, political science, history, or economics, interacting with each other? How is it influencing something, some phenomena, some policy that has been created within the country, right? So that is the whole idea with which we are approaching the BA courses in the law school environment. So we are going to kind of integrate and bring in a level of interdisciplinarity, bring in a level of context, how, any of these disciplines are, relevant to our study of law. So it's not going to be in isolation. It is going to be speaking to each other. It's very actively interacting at the same time as we are learning about certain concepts in any of these disciplines with respect to law.
Perfect, sir. That was something which even makes me wonder that, when the students would come in and when they will gain exposure to such kind of an approach, the way they're going to learn law is going to be mesmerizing. Now, the same question comes to you also, Professor Anand. I understand that BBA LLB in Mumbai is one of those ideas which cannot ever be challenged, because you travel in the city and you can see that business, management, economics is something which you can feel it in the air of it. But then I am very interested to know that at BITSLAW, how have we created, apart from the geographical advantage which we have of BBA LLB course in being Mumbai, what else should the student know about the BBA LLB course in BITSLAW?
Sure. First of all, let me address an elephant in this room here. So many students who come to me with this kind of question, including parents, and rightfully so, they feel that there is a BBA program in this BBA LLB thing. So let me address that. And I think many of you would know, but there's no harm in repeating this. So the BBA part, first of all, is encapsulated in roughly 9 to 10 courses. Now, all of you sitting here and, in part of this webinar, you know that the 9 to 10 courses do not constitute a BBA program, but the nomenclature of this degree is BBA LLB. The reason is that there are, in fact, 9 to 10 courses which are from BBA curriculum, which means that accounting will be there, finance, marketing, organization behavior, those kind of courses will be there. So to the extent there are 9 courses of BBA or business courses, does it make sense to teach those courses as they are taught indeed to BBA students, classical BBA MBA students? We at BITS Law Schools disagree with that. Lawyers, the students who are getting into BBA LLB program, or for that matter, BA LLB program, they should not be taught finance, accounting, marketing in the way a classical BBA MBA program would teach. But the challenge is, how do you do that? I mean, if I look for a book for finance or accounting for BBA LLB students in India, I do not find any, because those books are written for, BBA students or BBA MBA student who are going to specialize in finance later on. But with BBA LLB student, at least in this 5-year, will that student specialize in classical finance, accounting, or marketing, or strategy, or anything? No. So therefore, these business courses should be taught. Obviously, I don't know why I have to say that it should not be taught in the way that the BBA students should be taught. So the first thing that we are doing differently, and I'm very convinced that we will be doing it differently, we will teach finance, accounting, marketing courses the way we believe should be taught to law students. So let me give you an example for finance. There are many models in finance, mathematical statistical models, and in accounting, there are a lot of ledgers, journal, balancing the balance sheet, income, variety of statements. Will BLLB and BBLLB student doing that in their internship? Will they be preparing balance sheet? Will they be passing journal entries? Will they be, doing ledgers? No, they will not be doing. But BBA LLB students and BA LLB student in some time in their life, depending on which path do they take and where they go, it is expected that they might be asked to define what is volatility in the stock market. Now, volatility from the legal perspective. So the BBA LLB student, BLLB student need to understand that when finance professionals define volatility or riskiness of a particular financial asset, they should be able to understand the underlying assumptions of those complicated statistical model so that they can question, and also whether the product that has been created, does it fulfill and meet the requirement of the client and ethical and the way according to law of the land or not? That is the issue. So how do we teach that? So we are, first of all, the first thing is that we are very sensitive about this issue, that lawyers or BLLB student, BBLLB student should not be taught in the same way as BBA students. So therefore, our teaching is mostly informed by what is happening in the country and the world, where the finance and law, business and law interact. And since there are no books, this is what BITSLAW contributes. Our faculty member prepare those kind of, study material, curate those kind of examples from around the world, especially from India, and then use that in the classroom. That's one thing. Second thing, I mean, just give me one more minute. In order to further this particular cause, we have also identified, some other material as well. For example, Harvard Business Publishing School's case studies for undergraduate, many of those case studies are quite useful, and they are written in Indian context. They are quite useful for law students, undergraduate law students. So I guess we will be the first law school in India to experiment with case studies methodology in business related courses, which are related with what is happening in the country right now, or let's say last 5 years, 6 years, the emerging issues and the issues that remain to be important, we'll be using that. So just to summarize, first of all, law school students should not be taught business courses the way BBA, MBA courses students are taught. Second, we will be curating very relevant case studies from the best possible sources, including Harvard Business School's undergraduate case studies. And the third thing is that our pedagogy will also reflect that. A lot of teaching will happen through discussions, through narrations, through writing and simulation game and variety of other kind of exercises, rather than just rote learning certain kind of models and getting students bogged down with a lot of statistics and mathematics.
I am really exhilarated by your answers. So, the kind of pedagogy which we have created, and you are absolutely right when you say that there are no books specifically for, students of BBA LLB. And now I know what you are doing in the campus, sitting with faculties and, brainstorming and creating those materials. Excellent. Okay, now the next question is to Professor Vishwas. Professor Vishwas, being a BLLB myself, I understand that there is so much of theory which has to be taught to a BLLB student. And those theories are something which are very interrelated to the law that they learn. Now, a question from a perspective of a student who's taking BLLB, that how much of theory is taught? What is the percentage of theory in law? And would a student who's from a non-humanities background be able to survive, or be able to, what should he do? How should he be mentally prepared when he joins us and, after taking up this course, BLLB?
Let me try to answer this question, by trying to address the elephant in the room, which is what every science student fears when he actually kind of walks into a classroom where you're a bunch of humanities students and, you really don't know how to go about answering, certain questions, especially when it comes to exams, right? Same concern that I had almost 25 years back. And the answer to that question is, here's the deal that we make for our first year students. We have very carefully thought about the fact that law attracts a lot of attention from students coming from different disciplines: science, commerce, humanities. For all you know, in future it could increase to a whole range of other areas, right? And the idea is to start from a blank slate, not to create some kind of an advantage for someone who's trained in humanities or someone who's trained in commerce, and leave behind someone who's not trained in any of these areas. The idea is to create an even keel and a platform where everyone begins, first. And the most important thing is, for those who are trained, Anand will, vouch for me here, is we need to unlearn a few things that you've actually learned in your 11th and 12th. We need to dispel a few problems that you've picked up over a period of time. So if anyone is thinking that, oh, I've studied humanities and it's going to be a breeze when I take up BA LLB, or I've studied, commerce, and it's going to be a breeze when I'm studying BBA LLB. Dispel all of these notions. There is nothing that is going to get repetitive. I already told you the way the course is going to be taught is very, very different from what you would have probably heard from a whole range of other people from other law schools. We are bringing in law in the context of a number of these courses. So the idea is to create an even keel, even platform, so that nobody is, is at a disadvantage. So in essence, that primarily means, we will equip all our students about the manner in which you go about learning these tools that you're going to gain through the classroom teaching and the tutorial mode. And at the same time, enable all our students, be it commerce, be it science, be it, humanities, if you're coming from any of these backgrounds, about your approach to kind of, dealing with a whole range of, questions or problems, be it in the form of your assessments, be it in the form of, your tutorial sessions, be it in the form of written exams in the end term or in the midterm for that matter. So you should dispel all kinds of fear that I'm from, commerce background, or I'm from science background. How will I cope up with a humanities course? Or similar if you're taking up BBA, right? So the idea is to kind of start from the scratch and begin with a new, base. We are going to create that base, and we will equip you with all the, training that you're required to actually go through the rigors of each of these courses. And that is why I'm kind of saying, I'm very confident of saying anyone with any background can start off and do really well in any of these courses. Now, of course, the second part, in the first part of the question that Deepu asked, how much of theory that you will have to kind of, come across. Here's a way to approach it. And I mean, if you're trained in science, the one important thing that you will always look for is logic, right? There's a principle somewhere there, and that principle is the basis on which you will apply that principle to a whole range of contexts. So that is where it all comes down to. Whatever theory that is actually kind of imparted both in BBA course or in the BA course, it's all about application and using logic to kind of come up with a well-grounded response to anything. So yes, there is going to be theory. Yes, there is going to be a lot of reading. You're taking up law, right? If you're taking up law, don't expect that, it's going to be a small textbook and I can get through a year. No. If you are studying law, that means, there's a lot of reading. There's a lot of, processing of whatever you read and, getting your understanding, breaking it down through your logical interpretation. And that is the tool set that I'm trying to, I'm trying to convey, that whichever background you come from, whatever amount of reading that you might have to do, you're in safe hands. And we are here to kind of impart that skill as well. It's not merely about a lecturing system. I don't want to get into pedagogy here, but at the same time, it's a whole lot of skill-based learning that we'll get into.
The next question is very interesting, and both of you have published so much in your life. I'm 100% sure you'll be able to give a good answer. This question is from the perspective of a first-year student. So the question is, what kind of researchers, both for a BLLB student and a BBLLB student, should he start from the very first year? Because research is a very integral part of the 5-year program. So we'll start with Professor Anand first, and then, Professor Vishwas, you can join in. Yeah.
All right. I would have preferred that Professor Vishwas started out this answer, but let me, say a few things here. I will, whatever I'm about to say, that is relevant for BBA courses, especially. So I think research, not unlike many other things, is also a mindset. in the sense that we have already hinted upon some of those issues. But as far as BBA or courses are concerned, and I guess that will be relevant to other courses also, to be able to come up with a question worth researching is the most interesting part of research as far as finance and business issues that are concerned. Rest, as once you have the question, of course, there are 5 years BLLB program, BBLLB program, which will teach you how to conduct research, because coming up with a question is definitely very important. But in order to address some of those questions, you need to figure out multiple things, and which Professor Vishwas, I'm sure, is going to allude to. But I will stop by saying this, that in order to inculcate that kind of mindset is very important. How do you do that? There are two diametrically, in my opinion, opposite pathways here, which must somehow converge for many young students, and in fact, for me also, older people as well. One should be able to focus on the details and then be able to, and this is the diametrically opposite part, link it with the bigger picture as well. That is true even in the financial market, that you need to be able to look at the detail as well as the bigger picture. Now, there are people in this world who have very fine eye for details. There are people who look at the big picture. But my fondest hope is that, including for myself and also for my young students, that if they are able to have some modicum or some extent of, mindset for both of these things, to be able to focus on detail and to be able to link those details with the bigger picture is the most important thing. And I think for research, Professor Vishwas is far more qualified than I am to basically speak, in the at least in the law school program. So I will let him answer this particular question in detail.
Yeah, I'm, very interesting aspect that I'd like to kind of focus upon is your first year courses, especially, related to, all the courses that you'll be undertaking, is there is going to be an element of research, underpinning everything. Anand already kind of told you how the Hindenburg, report was largely kind of, understood by a whole bunch of people who didn't necessarily have a training in finance. So similarly, there's a whole range of things that a bunch of first year students can actually end up doing. And you'll always be surprised. Sometimes it's also, comes across as, it's a shock and awe kind of thing, that there have been instances of first year law students being part of very successful mooting teams that have won internationally, right? Like, participating in JESOPs, right? That tells you there is enough ability and skill set to actually gain in your first year itself that can actually kind of put you in the sphere of, subsequent year students, right? You're probably, picked up things very quickly. Every course will have a research component, and there are certain courses that will equip you with the skill sets to actually pursue research. And that is more important than anything else, right? Understanding where to look for, what to look for, trying to interpret what you're reading, structuring it the way, that everyone can understand, or different kind of audiences can understand. As a lawyer, you write different kinds of, there are different kinds of writings. There's a writing that you do for common public. There's a writing that you do, within your own law firm to, brief your senior, brief your team. There's a kind of writing that you do specifically for, legal purposes, for courts more specifically. All of these are skill sets. And all of this involves a fair bit of, research skill sets that you will imbibe during your 12 months, your first year as such. It doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop merely doing research for your particular course. You will be surprised that there are a number of young students who have the caliber to transition from being just a first year law student where there's very little expectations from them, but at the same time some have done some really interesting research. Say for instance, they study this course on tort law. They study questions about liability, right? But there are some students, first year law students, who've thought about, oh, what about artificial intelligence? What about autonomous vehicles, right? Autonomous vehicles are increasingly there's gaining of traction. Tesla kind of gives the technology. It's a package. It's a separate inbuilt package that you can opt for in your Tesla car. So, and there is a Bangalore-based tech company very recently did a testing on autonomous vehicles. So some students are very smart. They've picked up their understanding of tort law, notions of liability, and introducing that understanding in writing a paper on artificial intelligence and liability. Who's going to be liable if an autonomous car goes wonky? Right? So, there are always surprise packages when it comes to students, and there is no boundary as far as research is concerned. All your courses will involve some element of research, and on top of it, you're learning that skill set. You are evolving over the 12 months in terms of gaining that skill set, and some really do well. They accomplish some, a few things in their first year itself. So don't set bars for yourself. Don't set a low bar for yourself. Don't go for low hanging fruits. A lot of students do end up doing really well in their first year.
Great, sir. I'll skip the next question because Professor Anand has already answered it. It was about a student from a non-commerce background and how would he cope up with a BBL. We have already answered that. The next question is about a very important thing, and it is about the interdisciplinarity, which is embedded into the law courses by BITSLAW. So we have two courses, which is BLLB and BBLLB, and how are we dealing with the interdisciplinarity concept here? So I think Professor Vishwas, you can take up that question.
Yeah, I mean, I always get asked this question, especially when I teach certain courses at a more advanced level, like say, interface between intellectual property and competition law, or courses like standard essential patterns, or music and copyright, biotechnology regulation. Or health law for that matter, or pharmaceutical regulation for that matter. One of the key things that we always notice, especially with my background in teaching two different setups. One is a autonomous public university, other is a private university. The often asked question is, students come with this notion that they have they have a particular understanding of law, and it is only about interpreting what the law says. But law is not that simple. Law is always more complex. There's a historical element in it, there is a political element in it, there's an economic element in it, and there's a social context within which the law emerges, right? And, those are very, very powerful, to say the least. And as a result of this, it is but imperative for all of us to kind of get a sense of this interdisciplinarity, approach. To give you a very good example, when I was pursuing my PhD, it was 2006, 2010, a lot of the UK law schools, they were, in silos, isolated law schools, right? Very interesting transition kind of happened in UK. And I'm making a reference to UK because that's where I've spent a significant amount of time. They started transitioning, they started calling their law school as School of Law and Political Science, School of law and social justice. Now that is a signal, very clear signal that UK's law schools understood that there is a very, very different approach to studying law, and that is the element of interdisciplinarity, right? And there are quite a few UK laws that combine with business laws, business and management as such, right? So that gives you a very good sense in terms of where legal education itself is heading. It is all intermeshed, interconnected, interdisciplinary. And very, very interestingly, quite a few UK law schools are now mooting a very, very interesting, degree called computational law. That is bringing in an element of computer, science and law, right? Merging it and calling it computational law. So an entire degree is actually emerging out of it, right? Data science and law. To give you an example of how interdisciplinary the legal education has become, these are very, very powerful ideas that signals that you're actually getting from a market outside of India. And we in India, if we ignore this, it is coming at a huge cost. It is coming at the cost of our students. And at BITS, we are committed to this idea of interdisciplinarity, which is the reason why I said even your social science courses, which are designed for you to be taking in the early years, are also going to have that element of law. If you're saying that there is a particular sociological phenomenon, how did this emerge? How has it actually influenced the making of the law? What is the historical context in which this law got actually designed? What is the political angle in today's time in terms of how this law has actually changed? What is the economic perspective? Is there an impact? Is there a positive or a negative impact on it? This is the full, 360-degree view of how a law actually gets constructed. Without this interdisciplinarity lens, there is no way of actually progressing further in terms of law, which is one of the reasons why law firms today are insisting that they want a better understanding of, social science fields for their, prospective, hirees, right? If you do not have a better understanding of this, it means I'm spending a whole lot of time trying to train you. And I don't want to spend that amount of time to train you on these elements. I want you to come trained, right? I want you in my law firm with this interdisciplinarity understanding, right? That is the 360-degree perspective that we are trying to actually kind of give. It's a holistic, understanding, right? So interdisciplinarity in law is enmeshed. BITS is committed to this idea to the extent that we start from the very first semester, and it goes on until you're in your final semester. Courses like competition law, heavy involvement of law and economics coming into play. Courses like environmental law, right? And damages related to environmental pollution, etc. Law and economics comes into play, right? Courses that involve regulation, there's philosophy involved, there is sociology involved, there's economics involved. So this is a no-go. It's a no-brainer. Interdisciplinarity has to be the base or the foundation on which all your law courses are built. Otherwise, it's the failure of legal education if we do not address this issue.
Excellent, sir. Now, the next question is, a curious student wants to know that how would a day look like at BITSLAW for a prospective law student?
Deepu, I think you are best equipped to answer this question. Why don't you go ahead and answer this?
Yeah, I would answer it from the perspective of the time I spent, which was, a few years back at a law school. I remember, I don't want to scare anyone here, but I remember my, my vice chancellor walking up to the dais and with a very serious face. His name was Professor V.S. Rekhi, a Delhi University, very famous professor of law. And he says, if you are serious about doing law, take my words very carefully. You have to live a life of a hermit and work like a horse. And if anyone, does not agree with me, you can go to the registrar office, get your fees back, and please get lost. We thought he was joking, but he was damn serious because for the next few months, we understood that our life has begun. And most of my friends who were doing, say, a BCom or a BBA from a commerce college, they were enjoying their life. I was enjoying life, but in a very different manner. I remember sitting inside a classroom and understanding the concepts through which, wherever I would go and put in my name, why do they ask my father's name also? I thought it's a system which we follow. But then in my class, the professor told me that why a relationship is legal in nature. What is my relationship with my father? And believe me, there were so many myths which were getting broken. There were so many concepts which was getting introduced to me. And I was like, wow. So I would say every day I was growing, I was becoming more and more mature. And I was understanding one fact, that I'm being taught about something which is called as human behavior, why a certain human behaves in a certain set of manner, and why someone is regulating my actions. And what is the concept called as right? What is the concept called as duty? What is the concept called as liability? What is the concept called as a liberty? And believe me, it was so interesting that though the term vacation from my life went missing, I never objected to it, because when people were having vacations, I was having internship breaks, where in the morning I would go to a law office, I would see Warner Brothers, they were sitting, representatives of Warner Brothers were sitting in front of me. And I was like, wow. But then I understood that what exactly is happening. We were discussing about the legal issues connecting to it. We were talking to, the representatives of Warner Brothers. We were talking to people from Volkswagen. And, I used to enjoy the same. Now, life of a student at BITS Law School is going to be much, much better. I could vouch for it, because when I went to a national law school, there were certain things which we did not have. We had to compromise. It's a government setup, right? So in terms of infra, in terms of faculty, there were always something which was missing. But then when I came and I joined the law school at BITS Law School, from the very first day, I could see that everything is very set here, including the common room for the students, where the sports facilities are there, where in between, the classes, you also have the time to go sit and relax. There's a cafeteria where I saw when I saw the cafeteria, I remembered my law school time when we used to go to a small tapri, which was just outside our campus, sit there and have tea and discuss things. The library is plush, where whatever concepts the faculty is teaching you in the classroom, you can go there, research, probably come back and discuss with the faculty that this is exactly what you feel. And that is what law school is all about. Law school is not about faculty imposing his viewpoint on you. He is coming and discussing a viewpoint which he wants to be challenged, critically analyzed. And believe me, I still think the best years of my life were the 5 years I spent in law school. So that's exactly where I became what I am today. It started out because there was, believe me, I was a day scholar in the very first year. In the first trimester, my law school had trimester system. So in 3 months, everything was over for us. And I remember I was very close to my mom. So I stayed as in I used to travel 20 kilometers by a bike to reach my law school and then head back. But in the next trimester, I remember telling my dad that I want to go to the hostel. Yeah, I am very close to my mom, but I'm missing out on something. And you know what made me do it? Because in every class, the faculty would come in and he would discuss something, and then he'll go back. And he would give us a point to ponder, which we were supposed to go back to the library, read and come back. And in the next class, we had to elaborate about whatever, we have learned. And believe me, when I was sitting inside the classroom, I could see that I'm missing something, because all other friends of mine who were hostlers were coming out with brilliant concepts. And then I realized that these guys would go back Even if it is a cafeteria, anywhere, they were discussing these things. It was more about discussions. It was more about meeting of minds. And we have students from Pan India who were there, just like in BITSLAW school. We have students from Jammu, we have students from Guwahati, we have students from Trichy, we have students from Trivandrum. So these are the different kinds of psyche and background and diversity who are one place, who are discussing human behavior and the laws which have been made. It's a very different feeling when you sit and do these things. I was missing out what, the generation which is attending this class with this session would call as FOMO, the fear of missing out. And I had that FOMO that I'm missing out. And that's how I moved to hostel. And our basic recreations were all intellectual in nature. Our basic sports were also something where we were understanding concepts of, I remember there was a football match where something happened. I don't remember exactly. And there was a friend of mine who pulled out a FIFA manual. I said, this is exactly how it is supposed to be. That's exactly what we developed into. Our thought pattern and our faculties were our guides. And that's where at BITSLAW also I could see, with professors like this, you are in for a gala time, where in the first 6 months itself, I can guarantee you, the people who know you will come and tell you that you have changed and changed for good. Your thought process has changed. The way you think has changed. And that's what makes this journey very, very memorable. And believe me, you would always, always love to come back to it. That's how we go to our alma mater, deliver lectures and come back, because this is that part of life where you can with pride say that you have changed. Okay, that's an average day. And anything that I have missed out, I would be very happy if if the professors here can add to it.
Yeah, I mean, Deepu, I think you pretty much kind of captured some really interesting elements. But there's also a fun element in law schools, and different law schools have different, fun elements, right? I remember in NUJS, they used to call it as a cesspool. And, it was famous or infamous during the holy time. They would they would celebrate Holi in such a large fun manner that that cesspool would turn into a color pool. So different institutions have different fun elements. I think a lot of law schools allow for different kind of societies to come up. We'll certainly kind of encourage, stuff like a theater society or a debating society or a film club to come up, sports club to come up. Students not only do, just the study part. The interesting bit about, my own experience of, teaching in NUJS is a very unique and peculiar behavior of NUJS students used to be, they would always wake up late. They are late for their breakfast, but it's far more deeper than what I thought. That they always wake up late, and sometimes there's some really interesting insights that you get from hostels. That those hostels were not equipped with ACs. The temperature always used to be humid, so students would say, I mean, we can't sleep before 3 a.m. Right? If we can't sleep before 3 a.m., why can't we be constructive about it? A lot of them actually wrote, research articles, some in international peer-reviewed journals, which are actually well established. They nurtured their skill sets. There are two wonderful entrepreneurs from NUJS, who now kind of have a multi-crore turnover, in whatever business they are doing. And another one turned out to be a very well-known entrepreneur who runs a major website, a law website from NUJS. So one who's interested in sports and more specifically playing cards, rummy, etc., ended up becoming a sports lawyer. Who would have imagined? You may not have necessarily been the best student in terms of grade. You don't assess student quality on the basis of grades. You rather, enable and equip them to follow their passion. And that's very, very important. I'm very proud to say some of my students have turned out to be really, really good. Wonderful sports lawyer. There's another one who's now part of the legal council of the Olympics committee. Interesting facets, interesting abilities. There's a lot of ways to have fun. Intellectual fun is one element of it. So a lot of them tend to moot, and they tend to have really interesting mooting groups in law schools, very competitive. And there are also enough instances of students kind of pursuing their own activities. One of them from Northeast has gone on to be a musician. So there you go. I mean, it kind of enables you to do a whole range of things. And I think you should have fun. You should mix that fun with a fair bit of planning to kind of manage your courses, your understanding of courses, and also do some really interesting research and other fun activities. That's what I would, I wouldn't kind of create a formula.
Yeah, that's what makes it more interesting, because I remember throughout my school life, I've never done anything called as cultural activity. But when I went to law school, I went ahead and, did something called as a play. So
Let me add one thing here. I mean, I have been speaking to a lot of young students who have applied to BITSLAW school, and many of them have received admission letters, and they are here, many of them. I think we have selected a bunch of very interesting young students. Wherever in a professional program, there are interesting young students. By interesting, I mean students who want to engage with the word in a variety of ways, including intellectual activities and also cultural activities. There are bound to be activities. There are bound to be interesting activity, discussion in the corridor, discussion at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. These are the most cherished memories of that. And this is where these are the hotbeds of ideas. That's how entrepreneurs come about. That's how legal scholars come about. That's how best professionals come about. So the reason why cities are considered to be cradle of innovation is because that density of that kind of experience and intellectual prowess. So I can guarantee all the students that we have made it sure that we have students in the campus who are interesting in that way, who are deeply engaged, they are curious, and they want to go, they are hungry to go out there and do stuff. Interesting things are bound to happen there.
So there are two questions now. One is that a student is asking us whether there are specific moot codes for BBA LLB students and BA LLB students. And the second question is, what are the teaching innovations which BITS Law School is coming up for making teaching and studying law more effective and efficient?
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question on moots, mooting is a very, very competitive process, and people will tell you that, within the law schools there's an intra round, right? And they are supposed to be the more everyone is thrown in the mix. There are all kinds of competitions around moots. There are intra rounds. There are ranking amongst the mooters. It gets very prestigious over a period of time. Depending on your intra rounds and your ranking within the law school itself, you are you're kind of allowed to kind of participate in different mooting competitions of different categories and prestige, right? So anyone, be it BA, BBA, BCom, doesn't really matter. It is all about your skill sets and how you manage to kind of persuade the judges to kind of in terms of convincing them about your line of thought or point in law. And we don't necessarily kind of create these divisions. In fact, no law school does. Yeah.
So innovation teaching techniques, that's
Yeah, I mean, see, one of the important things that we have tried to kind of create in the BITSLAW school is being very, very conscious of the fact that, students spend a significant amount of time in the classroom, and each faculty member has the freedom to move away from a one-way street called the lecturing method, right? Of course, quite a lot of schools have moved away from that lecturing method. They have in some way kind of adopted the case method approach, the Socratic method, etc. Apart from these bits of innovations that have happened in the classroom environment, we are bringing a whole range of innovations which are completely left to the faculty members to kind of design, rework, and make it more interactive and collaborative, because learning is a collaborative process. It's not just an individual process. It's not a passive mode of learning. It is a collaborative mode of learning. So you have a range of techniques that we will be employing in the classroom to make it a collaborative effort of learning, rather than someone passively listening to a lecture that is coming from a faculty member. So to that effort, we want to kind of extend that to a particular environment, which we call as the tutorial system. Now, a number of law schools have tried the tutorial system. I don't know to what extent they've been very successful, but ours is a slightly more niche tutorial system where we are going to divide our students either in numbers of 6, 10, or 15. And the tutorial system is going to get all the more plug into what you've learned in the classroom system, and you're required to kind of apply that in your tutorial sessions. So that in itself is a major diversion from what a lot of other law schools are doing. Our biggest advantage is the numbers. We have a set number of students, and we can go full hog when it comes to actually doing the tutorial system in a very niche manner. So your classroom, interaction or collaborative learning is also going to be supplemented by what is called as a tutorial system or tutorial based learning, which is very, very well known in universities like Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, UCL, these King's College. These are universities that have actually kind of brought out the tutorial system to the fore and made it more effective. And we want to kind of take up the tutorial mode of learning to supplement the classroom learning. Techniques wise, Anand, if you have, you might want to kind of stress upon any specific pedagogical tool that a faculty might actually use.
So I can only speak about the business courses.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether students are aware of some of these tools that are available, like simulations, like games. As I said earlier, also, there's not much point in teaching business courses to law students as if they are being taught to BBA students or MBA students. Therefore, when students are actively involved in games and simulations, by that I mean that every round of that simulation or game, so students will have to input some decision in that. Now, if you're learning theory, let's say finance or accounting, and you're just solving some questions, of course, you'll get involved. But if you are entering your decision in an interface, I mean, I'm sure many students who are present here, they must be playing a variety of games. Every game involves taking certain kind of decision. Not every game, most of the game involve taking certain kind of decision. The moment you get into that decision-making game, mindset, that's where the real learning begin to take place. And also very healthy level of game kind of competition actually gives you immediate feedback in the sense that you took this kind of decision. What happened with my decision? So one of the the criticism of academic program is, or some sort of at least academic discipline is, where's the feedback? You have created this model, you are applying this theory or that theory, but where's the feedback? Do you know this theory works? One way, I'm not saying simulation and games always throw out perfect learning, but I'm saying it puts you in that kind of mindset where you're looking for, if I do this, what's going to happen? And if the system gives you immediate feedback, then you know that you did something wrong and you'll remember that. That's one kind of innovation. As I said earlier, I want to emphasize it again. This entire, business non-law courses, they are, in my opinion, in our country, are being taught as if they are a mere addition, the non-law courses. That's something we're going to change. We are going to teach these non-law courses, which will serve as foundation for a variety of very important law courses. Now, we are not going to treat non-law courses as if that we just have to meet BCI guidelines. We are going to make them a foundation for a variety of courses that are going to be taught to students. I mean, we can go into details for that, but this is our promise that our non-law courses will not be mere additions.
Yeah, I mean, to add to what Anand said, when it comes to, teaching law courses, right? We've done some really interesting innovations. For instance, for advanced years or contract law, having negotiation exercises. Now you have Anand kind of mentioned simulation exercises. So you have a hypothetical situation. So there's a bunch of students who have to kind of negotiate a contract. That kind of helps you understand the different elements of the contract law in itself, how things kind of unfold, right? So negotiation exercise is a very, very interesting one. And as you go into more advanced years, trying to understand corporate law, trying to understand financial law, banking law, etc. These negotiation exercises become really, really interesting. Say, for instance, imagine a scenario where you're asked to actually, in the class over subsequent, sessions required to restructure do a sovereign debt restructuring. That's something that I did as a student, way back, 20 years back. And I've done it successfully in my financial law course in the past. There's a Sri Lankan debt crisis. For all you might ask the students to kind of, you represent, different stakeholders, Sri Lankan banks, foreign banks, foreign investors, local investors, government, etc. And you might ask, some an IMF or World Bank, and maybe ask to kind of restructure the sovereign debt. Similarly, you can have role play coming into play where the entire class could be actually divided, say, for instance, early years of law, where it's all about developing or creating a law in itself. How does a law actually kind of gets created? Lawmaking process itself, someone playing the government, someone playing the public, someone playing the different stakeholders, right? And then you try and simulate and create an environment where you're required to bring in your different viewpoints and interests, and then try and work out how a law is actually created. Law drafting exercises. All of these are elements that can come into classroom teaching. There is a whole there's space for all of that to happen in your daily classroom teaching as well, right? So all of these, I would say, add up as innovations in terms of classroom, teaching.
Excellent, sir. There is this one question before the last question, which I have to take up. It has been asked by an anonymous student, but the question seems a bit something which you could throw light on. The question is, what would be the grading system in BITS? Would it be percentile grading or else the credit system? And how the credits are divided?
No, the two things whoever's asking is probably doesn't have an idea. The credit system, every law school has its own credit system, right? So credits are number of hours you're going to be taught a particular course. So most courses will have a credit allocated to it. So we have a credit system, and I think if Anand, correct me if I'm right. We have 200 in 24 credit, 216 credit, right? 216 credit. So in all, you will be studying about 54 courses of 4 credits each. Right. So that's the credit system. The grading system is, of course, entirely dependent on the amount of marks that you score in a particular subject. And we have a grade scheme on the basis of which your grades are actually decided. You have what we have is the CGPA system. Anand can probably explain it much better than me.
Well, I don't think there's much point to discuss the exact CGPA system at this point of time, but let's suffice to say that what are the grading system for? Grading system should not only give students some sort of feedback on their effort, but also feedback to the entire class as a collective as to how the class is going and how within the classroom, how students are placed, which will all of you will get to know. But at the same time, grading system is a signal to the market out, not just market, the society outside. So our grading system is mindful of having this right element of competitive spirit within the students, but not actually overly being dependent on mere competition. So let me say this to our students and parents who are there. We have been in education area for a very long time. We are mindful of the fact that how grading itself plays a role in creating an environment in the classroom, which is related with competition, which is related with learning. But if grades become too important, the learning suffers. And if we do not take care of proper grading system, then we are not able to give out the right kind of signal to the people outside the institution. We are pretty much mindful of that. I can assure you that we have thought through this thing, and you will find that our grading system are as reasonable and also as encouraging as possible for a law school students.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incentive, it's a factor that probably motivates students. But if you take it way too seriously and the tail starts wagging the head, it becomes a problem, right? And that is where most students actually go wrong, because you're more focused on the grade, whereas a law firm or your prospective employer is more interested in terms of, is your foundation solid? And how do I get to know your foundation is solid? I would get to know in the kind of internships that you have done. Second, I would get to know in terms of, okay, there is a filtering system for you to sit for an interview, right? There's a solid exchange between you and the law firm interviewer that will very clearly tell if you might, there are some schools which give you 90. 90 here doesn't necessarily mean anything until and unless it is in some way kind of, telling the prospective interviewer, okay, this boy or this girl's foundation is pretty solid. He or she knows the basics, right? Industry forms its own opinion about these grades, right? For instance, I give you a very good example. Oxford University, a very traditional approach. They still go by percentage system. 65% and above, you get a distinction. Not more than 15 to 20% of the class or a batch actually gets a 65, right? UCL, University of Warwick, LSE have a 70% requirement for a distinction, right? Every institution's metric is understood by the market really well. Even Oxford, for instance, when someone applies for a BCL, that is a master's in law program, understand if you're coming from a particular university, having 85% doesn't necessarily automatically take you in. Delhi University, if you study in Delhi University, you probably have got 59% and you probably have got a rank as well. This is how the metric operates. and institutions and market understand these elements. What is more important is a solid foundation. How do these solid foundations, get conveyed? I can give you two examples of my students. I'm very happy to, even proud to mention them, Pramotesh and Akshat. This kid Pramotesh, from his second year onward, the economics bug actually caught him, right? He studied economics. He thought it was a very, very logical kind of a subject. He understood it really well, and he started to figure out what courses actually, involves an element of economics. He figured out competition law. So from his third year onward, this kid only ate, read, and breathed competition law. His grades as far as the other courses didn't really matter. It was decent. It was not below par. He just kept it enough to kind of keep him going. But by the time he finished his fourth year, this kid had a fabulous publication that any well-known economist would be really proud of. International peer-reviewed journal. It's an Oxford journal. He says, I'm very happy I managed to get this publication out in his 8th semester, right? It goes without saying, some law firms don't like to hire students, and designate them for a particular portfolio. They tend to keep it open, right? But they made an exception for this particular kid, said, we are going to hire you for competition law. And that is a signal that market is willing to move around depending on your abilities. The second example is that of this kid called Akshat Agarwal. He came to me primarily for, he was mooting, and he was very much interested in mooting. So he had an IP moot. He was trying to, crack into, final rounds of an international moot. So we helped him, we advised him. He did really well in his moot. The IP bug caught on to him. Now, Akshat successfully kind of pursued internship in a top IP law firm in India, right? And by the time he was in his final semester, right, the law firm, in which he had successfully, every semester he would go back to the same law firm to do his internship. He didn't actually, do what the others did. They would move from one law firm to another law firm. He successfully followed one particular law firm. So, of course, when the interviews happened for a job in the law firm, he made it to the final round. And in the final round of discussion, lo and behold, when he went there with a lot of preparation, thinking that they will, ask him a lot of tough questions. The only question they asked him was, can you please sing us a song? I'm not joking. This kid was so good in copyright law that they said, just sing us a song. That's enough for us to decide. Now, these are exceptional cases, but that also tells you that if you're passionate about a particular course or a particular area of law, you can choose to do it. And you will not fail in it if you're doing it well. And this very kid, I just kind of got him for an international conference that we were doing in my previous institution. There were faculty members from Georgetown University, very, very well known for intellectual property law. I got him there just primarily as a participant. His interventions were so good that the faculty members, after lunch on day one, said, we are willing to kind of look aside the grades that you've scored and give you a full scholarship for your LLM. And full scholarship in LLM in US is really, really rare. Not many people manage to get it, right? It's quite another thing that he went on to, not do his, law firm job. He spent a year with Justice Pratibha Singh as a law clerk, judicial clerk, went to Berkeley for his LLM and got onto a PhD program. So this is a story as far as students are concerned. Don't be fascinated and fixated with grades. That is the biggest failing that one does, which is why I said the tail wagging the head is a problem. It's not the CBSE thing. It's not your 99%. This is law. There are no perfect answers. And grades are not what matters. Your entire skill sets matters. You come as a package. And that is more important.
I can add a couple of things. It's not just true for, law program. In fact, from here on, after your 10+2, most of the important question that you're going to look at, there will not be very clear-cut answers. Grades will not matter. What will matter is what you are able to do with the information, the knowledge, and your various kinds of tools that you have learned. And just last point, what Professor Vishwas just talked about, the industry knowing as to how to interpret a particular institution's grade. That is true with USA as well. Yeah. There was a very famous case between Harvard and Princeton, where Princeton students were worried that industry does not know that our average grades are a little lower than those of, Harvard. And they conducted a research. They specially constituted a research for this, and the result was out without any, doubt. That industry understood that this is how this particular institute grades student, and this is how others, institution grades students. So don't worry about the grade structure. Don't worry so much about, and of course you should be mindful of these things, but at the same time, do not get, obsessed. Don't obsess over the gradings. As far as your, professional education is concerned, 10+2 days are over.
Professor Vishwas, I had goosebumps when you were giving those examples. They are the ones which really are worth mentioning. And it goes without saying that it was basically, that you also played a great role in the lives of those students. Because if someone tells me that, you are good, you have achieved blah, 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 I tell them just one thing, that I'm an amalgamation of all the great professors who have taught me. They were the ones who were in a very, different manner guiding me. Even when I move into a class and I take a class, there are certain things which naturally comes to us because that's the kind of image, or that's the kind of impression that they have cast on us, right? So it was great listening to all those things. And before we wind up, there is this one question which has come up and it has stuck me here, which I want us to answer. It is asked by a professor amongst the audience, and she wants to know that given that Mumbai, we are in Mumbai, and given that there are so many shipping companies around, is there anything specific relating to maritime law which we are doing in BITSLAW?
I mean, the very, very important element to take note is, of course, you might have come across that we are at a very early stage, at the undergraduate level, giving 4 specializations, right? But a very important thing to keep in mind is, for those who may not necessarily be interested in these 4 specializations, there's also a bunch of elective courses that you're allowed to take, right? So, and your elective course could also involve maritime law. It could also involve, marine environmental issues. It could involve water law, right? So a whole range of bunch of courses could actually be out there. That entirely depends on the faculty, who's willing to kind of offer such interesting elective courses, right? And and you can also customize if you're probably not interested in any of the 4 specializations. You can take a bunch of courses, honors courses from each of these different honors courses and customize your honors course in such a way that it is interesting and it fascinates you, right? So there's a fair bit of flexibility apart from the honors courses. Of course, we have, possibility of taking, each student has the leeway to take 6 elective courses or optional courses, as some would actually call it. And that enables you to take courses of your interest.
Great. So there are some questions which I would answer because they're relating to, placements and internships. Dear parents, I know, and students, that you are concerned about the same. So we have an Office of Career Services, which will be headed by a person. and that person has been has been made as in charge not just for your internships and placements, but that person will be your link or a harbinger between us and the firms and the corporates. The person will fetch people from the industry. You will have lectures by eminent partners of law firms, by eminent people in the field who will come here and who will also emphasize on what are going to be their demands in the coming year, say 2030 or even before that. And that person will be your career charter. He'll be the one who will chart out, who will chalk out the plan for you, and he would be the one who will be interested with getting you opportunities in terms of internships and placements. Now, I won't lie here and I won't say that you will get placement, you will get internships. If there are 120 students, that person will bring in around 150 internships and placement offers. I'm just giving you a ballpark figure. But believe me, it depends also on you. Because inside the classroom, when you were sitting, the entire session, the professors were telling you about you using your skill set, you using those things and honing, and the examples which Professor Vishwas has gave. You have to prove yourself to those 150 opportunities which we bring in. We will get you into the door, but then inside the door, it is between you and the prospective employer to crack the code and make sure that you receive it, right? So that's how it is. So there is an office which will be taking care of the same. So don't worry about it. There were many questions about admissions, and I'm very happy that my teammates were able to address the same. And then there are certain questions which you can send it to us, and we will make sure that we answer it in the due course. So the last question of the evening, which is something which is very central to us, is towards both the professors. One mistake which you would not want any of the students to commit in the 5-year journey. And one of those things, which is a kind of a message from your part that they should do, or something which, which you think that you could not do and they should do in this 5-year pathway.
Yeah, I mean, since I studied law, I'll take the first stab here. One mistake, as far as I was concerned, that I did, probably, I mean, I studied law, I started studying law almost 25 years back. So the context has changed, things have changed from then on. And of course, you live in a completely different world where information asymmetry is something that is kind of resolved through the presence of the internet. But I think the bigger issue always is having the knowledge of what each of the law schools tend to kind of offer, to get a sense of the strengths and weaknesses of different institutions, and then making a call in terms of which one suits me the best. That's something that I never did. I probably kind of should have done more calibrated and a more measured, done a bit more deeper study in terms of going for the right kind of institution. More importantly, to keep in mind always that the biggest asset of an institution is the faculty. What kind of faculty inhabit that particular space? The second is what the institution can offer as a space, holistic, I'm saying. And I think that's where the initial institution that I went to didn't necessarily measure up to anything as far as these two elements were concerned, and that I would call as one of my biggest mistakes. And what's the second part, Deepu? I forgot.
One was about the mistake, and one was something which you would have done had you been a law student, in their shoes, and something you don't want them to miss out on.
Have fun. Mix both fun and academic work. One thing that I probably never managed to balance is to kind of plan my academic work and also have fun at the same time. I mean, I did go out and play, represented, my university for playing cricket and all of that stuff. But, it always felt onerous doing anything other than academic, and not being able to plan things was something that I think most students should try and do from the very beginning. I think that's where, you will actually kind of, start to feel that if you start doing the time management stuff, and also kind of give yourself some time to relax and have fun, I think that is a good mix to kind of, you can navigate the 5 years of law school with without a problem.
My turn, Deepu. Okay.
Yes.
I think
I'm eager to hear this now.
the biggest mistake that it was not an incident or anything. It was more of an attitude that I had when I was in undergraduate program, and I was doing chartered financial analyst at that point of time. And I actually considered myself quite intelligent at that time. I'm not, not saying anything with a tongue in cheek or something. I thought, many times when you are young and you feel that you know a lot of things, you have begun to understand this thing. And I thought that all these examination I could clear it, in last 2 months I'll study, or 1 month I'll study, I'll clear. Yeah, of course. The kind of the small place that I was studying in, it was possible for me to be best among that small group and all those things. It's possible, and therefore it somehow gave me some sort of belief that I'll study for 15 days or 1 month, I'll ace it. All those things did happen. When I went out of that bubble, and I realized that it was a big word out there, then I began to understand the importance of developing another, let's say, for lack of any better word, another muscle, which is somewhere here. That also requires practice, that also requires challenge, that also requires consistent, not very hard work, but definitely consistent, and having a mindset of going into details and getting into deep with anything, whether it's basically design of a cup or design of anything. That mindset becomes very important. That I understood way later, not even after my undergraduation. While working, I've thought that something like this, if I had in the beginning, I would have done many not saying great things, but many interesting things for myself. So because I had no one to talk about these kind of things, that how important it is, even if you consider yourself to be a genius, even then the practice of doing something consistently on a regular basis and actually thinking through things is a great things, which I learned a little later. Good thing that I did, I began to read a lot, wide variety of things, from science to poetry to sociology, finance, of course. I think when I began to read a lot, then I think now I can confidently say that I can do pretty well in a law school. Unfortunately, I attended a business school and I did chartered financial analyst, but I think I'm ready for a law school. And I'm very happy the kind of colleagues I have with me, and that kind of interest can still be sustained. So yeah, these are the two things that I can mention.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you to both of you for spending this time, and thank you to all the parents and the students who came along and spent hours with us. Those 75 questions which have been asked in the Q&A session, I was just going through them. Very interesting questions, and thanks to my team who have been answering those questions. So I did not pick up some questions because they have been already answered. And it was a great session. I could see a lot of parents are worried about the first batch and how would, BITS Law School adapt to the first batch and no alumni kind of a status. My answer is very simple. I belong to a law school where I was the 4th batch. And in my first batch, where the total number of students which was there in my law school was 80, but the first batch was only 42. And each of those 42 students are seniors, are legends in my campus. They are the ones who built that campus. They are the ones whose DNA was there in the entire campus. When I say DNA, I mean they created the campus in such a manner that they were the culture inside the campus. So if there was anything, say mooting, there was a name called as Dhruv Dewan that see, even after graduating in 2006, I still remember his name. So we used to look up to our senior and say, if you want to moot like Dhruv Dewan. That's how we used to say. They were the ones who were legends for us. And believe me, each of them today is something you move around the campus and you feel that, okay, this is how he used to do. Even the students who are studying today are, these names are like obvious names for them. They created the campus. They created the culture. Similarly, in NLS Bangalore also, I have heard legends about the founding batch. And it's yes, it's a kind of a responsibility that you are the first batch, but given the bandwidth which we have with the great institution called as BITS Pilani, which in the 90s had MOUs with MIT, with London School of Economics. That's our university. Our students are going to have degree of BITS Pilani, an institution of eminence. We are a school under BITS Pilani. So the kind of bandwidth of alumni which BITS Pilani has. So every city I go, I have parents who come and they introduce themselves as BITS Pilani. They just want to know the admission process. They don't even ask us anything. And I'm surprised that why the question is not coming. And I've often asked them that why so. They say we are the alumni of BITS Pilani. We know the way it works. We know the kind of no quality compromise on faculty and students which my institution has. I'm not even thinking twice. My kid is going to be a student of BITS. That's the kind of a faith that alumni who have graduated from BITS Pilani have. And that's exactly how we are also creating. We are not the first to create this. We have a school of management, which is running on the 8th floor of ours. It's a classic example. It's in its second year. And I have students who have left IIMs and have joined the school of management because of, in just 2 years, the kind of impact which it has created. Similarly, in law also, where we are a bunch of people who have come here from great institutions and we are trying to build, and the kind of support which we are getting from our mother institution, BITS Pilani, as well as Aditya Birla Group, which is behind it, is immense. We think and they do it. And that's what makes us think that this institution is, though in the very first year, has become one of those institutions. I hate to say this, but we are not rejecting students, but 120 seats, almost all the seats are gone. And right now, we are picking up the best of the best lot. We have LSAT 99 percentilers who have joined us. We have students in Plaid high rank as 300 who have joined us. The kind of students whom our professors are interviewing, they have a hard time. They come and tell us that what needs to be done. The student is good. We cannot reject the student. And the entire admission process which we have adopted is something which has been, the benchmark, the hallmark of excellence which we have created. And thanks to the parents who have trusted us. And, the trust is so immense that, the day we send the offer, within 24 hours, there are reactions of parents just sending in the huge amount of fees which we have charged. It's the kind of a trust that BITS has, garnered, and we are living up to it with the professors which you have just met. And in the coming days, you are also going to meet other professors also. They are the ones who are going to build this institution with the kind of students that we have selected. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks again to both our professors, and good night. Take care of yourself.